Hey guys, Latios here. I'm back with another video, and this is my third part of my Beyblade Burst QuadDrive videos. If you haven't seen the other two parts, which is the Cosmic Vector Battle Set unboxing and then the Vanish Fafnir unboxing, definitely check them out. And this is also the second part to my initial reactions to Hasbro's Beyblade Burst series. So if you haven't seen that one, I definitely suggest you do see it. Because that one is kind of important, and I'm gonna be talking a lot about things from that video in this one. So if you want like a much better understanding of my feelings towards what Hasbro is doing, definitely check that video out. The link for that specific video is in the description. So yeah, I've had the Cosmic Vector Battle set for about a week now, as with the Vanish Fafnir Beyblade. And I've done a lot of testing with them. I've tested them in the actual Cosmic Vector Battle Set Stadium. I've tested them in a couple other stadiums that I have. I mixed all of the parts, tested them with the launchers they come with Takrotomi launchers, battling against each other, battling against their Takrotomi versions. So I've done a good amount of testing for this, and so this is kind of going to be like a review of QuadDrive, but also my thoughts on how Hasbro is handling QuadDrive. Um, so again, if you guys didn't see that first part of my initial reactions to Hasbro's Beyblade Burst video, definitely check that out, because again, this is technically like a really big follow-up to that. With all of that said, let's just get into the video. So first, let's talk about the whole gimmick. It's called QuadDrive, and I know a lot of people don't like that name. I do. I think that that name is really, really good, and I do think it's fitting for the product line itself, and it's just a really cool name. I definitely like it a little bit more than the other Burst Seasons names that Hasbro have been giving. Um, and also, like I said, it's very representative of the actual product. It's not super it's not super, how can I say it, representative of the actual anime, because of the gimmick that Hasbro is kind of forcing on us, kind of not. So if you see my other video, you'll see that one of my biggest complaints is that Hasbro kept giving us wrong parts. They kept giving us like bad coloring on the Beyblades. Like I said, parts that's not supposed to be with the Beyblade. They kept removing gimmicks, and they kept forcing gimmicks that's not part of the season, the show, or the actual Takrotomi version of the Beyblades. Um, so in the past, they didn't really do that with the Metal Saga. When they wanted to do something different, they made it in the Extreme Top System line, until Metal Fury, where they screwed that up but then fixed it, and then Shogun Steel was just fixed for the most part. Um, so yeah, Hasbro with Beyblade Burst just went all out in screwing it up and forcing gimmicks on us instead of having a separate line for their gimmicks. I have already said before, I like their ideas, I like their concepts, it's cool, it's different. I just don't like that it's forced on us on Beyblades that don't normally have those gimmicks. Because of that, they removed the gimmicks the Beyblade is actually supposed to have, and the parts as well, which is definitely not cool. They kind of did the same thing with QuadDrive, but kind of. And we'll get to that in a minute, because the whole QuadDrive name is reflective of that. So one thing that I don't like about what Hasbro is doing with the marketing for QuadDrive is that they're basically calling it the first 4-in-1 high performance top system. Basically, like the first 4-in-1 Beyblades, or the first 4-in-1 high performance tops ever. And that is a total lie, because Hasbro themselves in Beyblade Burst, before they really started to screw up, did release Beyblades with multiple modes. And if you just look at the Takrotomi version of many Beyblades, you would see that there's like 4 or 5 different modes. Even with Beyblade, with the Metal Saga, they had released so many Beyblades with multiple modes. So calling this the first 4-in-1 high performance top system, especially considering that in Burst itself, Hasbro had released Beyblades with multiple modes, it's just a total lie, and I really don't like that. So yeah, saying it's the first 4-in-1 is not cool. Um, just saying it's a 4-in-1 top, then that's better. But their marketing all over, for the most part, has been saying the first 4-in-1 high performance top system, which is not cool. Again, that's from the marketing I've seen, and that was slightly before Hasbro had released it. Um, Over here, it doesn't specifically say that, it just says 4-in-1. But if I remember correctly, there was a different place that they did say it. But yeah, so at least they kind of fixed that with this packaging, as far as I can tell. I'm not spending too much time looking at everything that's written there. But online and in a couple of other marketing promotional stuff, they have been saying it's the first 4-in-1, so I don't really like that. So what do they mean by it's the first 4-in-1? I'm sure many of you already know. The first one is as displayed here. This is what in Takutomi we call the low mode, and in QuadDrive, Hasbro is calling it the core mode. I like the name core mode. I like it. And just so that you guys can get a better view, just because I don't really want to spend too much time on that right now. So when it's like this, here's a better example. So when it's low like this is core mode, and then we've got where this top part here is in the bottom, and that becomes apex mode. So that's already two different modes, right? That is in the Takutomi version. So I'm glad that they kept that gimmick. Now the second thing is the drivers. What they're doing with the drivers is, so we got a whole driver, but now each driver is technically 2 tips, and you can change it around. So I like that. It's a really, really cool concept, and it doesn't feel like it's fully forcing the gimmick on you. It doesn't feel like it's fully removing, like the actual tip from the Takutomi version. But at the same time, my complaints with that is, one, they're still removing the gimmicks, even though the mode is very similar, which we'll get to in a little bit. And two, they are basically, like, there's basically no point to this. Because one, you can't really change the tip when it's locked on. It just won't change. You can only change it outside like this. And while that makes it faster for just changing your tip up, you don't have a say in what the bottom tip is going to look like. So this one's kind of like a balanced stamina tip. But, so the good thing about it though is that you can definitely, if you want an attack tip plus this one, so it gives you an extra layer of customization, and if you feel like this one isn't doing too good, you just remove that. So I do like that. It makes it a little bit faster for some like quick performance tip or driver changes, but at the same time, you can easily just get the driver literally, and just swap it for a whole new different tip, and some of them have gimmicks. So again, I like this concept, I like this idea. It's just there isn't really a big function for it when you can easily just grab another driver and it's basically gonna do the exact same thing. But again, it is really, really cool. I do like it. It doesn't fully feel forced, like I said. So that's why they're calling it QuadDrive, basically. And I also do like, I guess now we should move on to the launcher. This is much better quality than the previous Hasbro launchers. I mean, this is still, like pretty cheap, but yeah, so it's not bad. It's a lot durable, a lot better plastic. I like that it says QuadDrive, and I really like that it has a little slot for you to put your tip in. So that's pretty cool, and you can launch it like this. I also really, really like that in a way there's this hole right here and a little peg, and you could just squeeze that in there sometimes because that one doesn't really work, and it will just stay there. But I mean, it can come off so easy. So I also really like that it's both left and right spin. So that's pretty cool. And again, the quality for this is so much better than what Hasbro was giving before. It does have a very smooth, hard plastic, but also very rubbery at the same time. Not super rubbery. It's just got like a faint rubbery texture to it that you kind of get used to later. Same thing for this and all of this. So that leads into one of my biggest complaints with how Hasbro was handling Beyblade Burst before, was the quality of the Beyblades. They butchered the quality of of the Beyblades so bad. It literally felt like cardboard sandpaper for me, and it was so light and it just looked all melted too. Like, definitely see that other video, you'll see my reactions to it. So it actually scared me, and I actually was worried that QuadDrive would feel like that. But thankfully, as soon as I grabbed this, I'm like, okay, this feels better. The ripcord too, and then I got the Beyblades, and I'm like, okay, these feel pretty good. Honestly, I'm really really glad that they fixed their quality for QuadDrive for the most part. So yeah, I just really really like that. It's much better quality than what they were giving us before. I would say it's close to the Pro Series, but not fully there, and in the middle of the Pro Series and what they were giving us before. So it's a better balance of them wanting to use cheaper stuff, but not making it feel cheap in that way, even though it kind of does, but not as much. And that comes mostly down to how softish and rubbery the plastic feels, especially the gravity ring, or yeah, I think that's what they're calling it, right? Gravity ring. um I don't even know, it doesn't say. If it's not gravity ring, then it's gravity chip. Either way, a lot of people did not like the name Hasbro gave these, because in Takatomi it's called the armor, but I like the name gravity ring or gravity chip because it kind of makes sense. It's supposed to be like that whole center of gravity for the Beyblade, especially when it's in that high mode. So yeah, this part though, as you can see, it's squishy. In the Takatomi version, these parts are metal. So, and this feels exactly like everything else, but less rigid. It feels a lot softer, but it has the same feel as everything else. And that's what I mean. Like, you can clearly see here, like, just how squishy it is. And again, it's fine if they want to do that for everything else. This though needed to be metal. I don't understand why they didn't make the gravity rings metal. And yeah, so at least everything else is not as squishy as this. It's a lot harder, but it still feels like it. So that's what I'm trying to say. So it's kind of cheap, but still not to the point where it feels like it's straight out bootlegs like what Hasbro was doing before. So like I said, it's a good balance between them cheapening out and them trying to be cheap but make it a little bit better quality, like what they have been doing with the Pro Series, which again for me still feels kind of like this, but a little bit better. But yeah, so that was one of my biggest complaints, and that's how these feel. So I'm so glad that they did fix that. Now, one of my other biggest complaints is basically what Hasbro had done with the actual Beyblades themselves. They had removed so much details from the Beyblades, and it was upsetting, basically. Thankfully, but we'll get to that. Thankfully, these Beyblades, they look pretty decent. And then here's Magma Ifritter. Again, it looks decent. It looks good for the most part, which is pretty cool. I'm really glad they kept the coloring on the inside. like that blue, for example, and then Bellfire, it's that gold rim right up there. So I'm glad that they kept that. In the previous releases, they wouldn't have even painted that. They kept some paint here. It looks decent, like I said. And yeah, overall, I'm impressed. But this was for the set, and the whole wave 1 looked decent. I'm pretty sure, I didn't double check, but Vanished Fafnir I think is from wave 1, I'm not sure. But Vanished Fafnir is a Beyblade that I really wanted to get, the QuadDrive version for this video. Because it kind of goes into them kind of going back to how they were with the previous series. So here's Vanished Fafnir. It looks decent. Again, it's passable. I don't mind it. But it's definitely missing details that the other two had. And, you know, I'm glad that they painted this. They left the green. They left the blue orb. And then this part here. But things are missing. And I don't have Salvage Valkyrie yet. Or I'm probably not even going to get the QuadDrive Salvage Valkyrie. But that already, like the photos that was already released straight out shows how it's gonna look, and it's missing even more details. So the first wave, the first few Beyblades that was released for QuadDrive, they went all out. Again, according to how Hasbro would go all out with Beyblade Burst at this point, with them. So they look decent and passable, you know, like this would be fine. I wouldn't mind keeping this. But after that initial few Beyblades that they released, the next few ones started looking worse. And then it seems like the ones we're going to be getting is going to be even worse than this. Again, this is still decent, but what we've seen from stock photos of what the next ones are going to be released, it's really upsetting that they're going back to how they were before QuadDrive in cheapening out on the details as well. So that's something I really don't like. And if we go and actually compare them, let's do this, the Destruction Bellfire, or it is Destruction Bellfire, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Against Dynamite Benil. So here's Bellfire, and then here's Benil. So first thing, the core is definitely a lot smaller, especially the gold rims over here. And the Destruction Bellfire does not have the white coloring. And it's also a little bit thinner too. And extremely lighter. And not just because the armor is metal on... Oops, does not have the armor. Sorry about that. And it's not just because the armor is metal on the Takrotomi version. It's just extremely light in general. So that's one of my biggest complaints about the QuadDrive bays, is how light they are and how that affects their performance. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, as you can see, there's a lot missing. And one thing I don't like is they kind of still kept the mold in a way to have it so that the gravity chip could be here at the side, like it is here in the Takrotomi version, but so that they could purposely make it so that you can't really use these parts. They shifted it diagonally, which I don't really understand. And of course, the way that you put these on is different. This one, as you saw, for the Hasbro versions, you just have to push into that little section and it just comes off. And then these come off by turning it. And then just turn it on again. And well, since we're doing this anyway, so this is how you would go into the high mode, basically. Yeah. And just so you guys can see this, even though I said I probably didn't want to focus on this, but at least so that way you guys can kind of see how it is different, even though you all probably already know that. So here we go. So that's, I believe, what they're calling Apex mode. Yep. So I'm glad that they kept that. Anyway, so again, to just remove it, it's fine, this system of, you know, changing it like this. I don't mind it at all. I think it's kind of quicker, but yeah. So with Takratomi though, you basically just have to push these two tabs in, push this out, and then you can change it. So yeah, you are missing a lot of details, but this really does not look that bad at all. But now let's go and get Vanish Fafnir, because not only does the Hasbro version of Vanish Fafnir lack so much detail that these two have, which I've, you know, as I said, they were going back to their roots of cheapening out on the details. They did more than that for Vanish Fafnir. So I'm just gonna get the Takratomi version, and here they are. You see the big difference now? So Takratomi is actually even a little bit bigger, and you've got all of these details, the red eyes, the flames, the claws. It just looks different. And then this is just a blob, a mess basically. So this is a very good example of Hasbro cheapening out. And if it didn't even have like the better quality plastic that the other ones, the other Hasbro Beyblade Burst Bays have, this would almost be kind of like those, as in like you put some effort into it, but you decided not to put that much effort because you wanted to cheapen out. Kind of like the Command Dragon that they did, which I show in that video specifically. But yep. So, and then one of the biggest things, which is them, again, removing gimmicks, because Vanish Fafnir's Vanish Wheel, it's literally a brick of rubber. So, you see how that's bending down? Yep. It's literally a rubber brick, a rubber wheel, basically. This whole section here is all rubber. And it's one of the best layers in general too for QuadDrive, or sorry, for Dynamite. What did they do with Vanish Fafnir in QuadDrive? Yep, it's all plastic, hard, and it's also super, super light. And that's a big complaint that I have, is like these are just so light. And again, we'll get to that soon, but yeah, they're just so light. Not as much as the other Hasbro releases though, thankfully, but still really light. But yeah, like you're just missing all of these details, and they removed the gimmick. Like, why not have this be rubber? And that leads into one of my complaints in terms of the gimmicks. So they already removed the gimmicks here. They then removed the gimmicks for Destruction Bellfire. Here's the driver for this Dynamite Banil. This part here is rubber. This does not have rubber, and it's a wider tip. So they changed the mold a little bit, but at least it looks the same. But at the same time, because Hasbro's not going to be releasing this, you can't put any of the gears on the Hasbro one like you can for the Takratomi one. Which I'm sure most of you already know this, but still. The only one that you can put is this gear on the disc, which you could just snap onto it basically. But that's about it. And as for the discs themselves, they're pretty identical for the most part, so that's fine. I just feel like this one's probably a little bit thinner, but it's okay. And yeah, and then of course the armors now was supposed to be metal like the Takratomi ones. They're now plastic, and because of that too, you can't just put a Takratomi armor here. They kind of did that on purpose, I'm assuming. So it's annoying when they do that. And then it's even more because again, it's kind of like they are forcing the gimmick on you, but at the same time kind of not, because it's still kind of the tip, but also kind of not. So that's why I'm kind of with how they're handling the drivers, but it's okay. It's not as bad as it was before. Here's the thing though with Vanish Fafnir. We got the same disc, tempered. Cool. Here is the driver for Vanish Fafnir. This tip is actually pretty good, but here's how it's supposed to look like, and it's supposed to represent the actual driver that they have, which again, as I said in my original Hasbro initial thoughts, it's sometimes they do kind of make it resemble, but then they just butcher everything else about it, such as kind of resembles but missing a bunch of details, remove the gimmick, and then gives us a tip that's similar enough to the one to at least pass by, but changing colors. And that's exactly what they did here, because here's Hasbro's Vanish Fafnir driver. Here is Takratomi's. It's got the same ring, same, like, having a little tip. And when I say same, I mean like, as in it's got a ring and a tip. It resembles it, but it's not the same tip. In fact, too, this one has a spring gimmick. This one does not. So again, removing things, making it look close enough, but not fully giving us that. So this was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to get a Vanish Fafnir, because they kind of butchered that. So that's something I really didn't like. Now, as for in terms of performance, we'll get to that in a little bit. I do want to quickly switch the topic and talk a little bit about the box that they're using, because if you see in the other video, I complain a lot about the packaging, but I love these boxes. Hasbro did a fantastic job on the QuadDrive boxes. First, I love the logo. I really love the QuadDrive logo. It just makes me think of the plastic gen boxes, and even some Takratomi Beyblade Burst boxes. It says what's included. So this is a starter, so it comes with a ripcord and the Beyblade. And I just love the coloring scheme. Nice product shots of the Beyblades. I really like this 4-in-1 here. At least it's telling you you've got these different modes. I just really do not like the Beyblade image that they put right here, because it looks very kiddie and it kind of contrasts with everything else. So yeah, and I really love the lines here. And yeah, overall, I think that their packaging is amazing for QuadDrive, and thankfully it doesn't feel cheap like their previous ones did. It still feels very thin, rough cardboard that does feel like sandpaper, but almost, at least for the Cosmic Vector battle set, that box definitely made me feel like the texture is very similar to how Hasbro's Beyblade Burst was before QuadDrive. So these ones, though, for the boosters or starters, don't feel that thin and cheap, basically. So these do feel a little bit better, at least in my opinion. But overall, for the most part, I really like how their marketing is looking for it, with the exception of saying the first 4-in-1 Beyblades and this Beyblade down here. Yeah, everything else I think looks pretty cool with their packaging. Now let's finally get into performance. As I've been saying, these are very light. They do okay, but with these launchers though, I'm sorry, there's just, and I have really small hands, like these launchers though are just very uncomfortable to hold. It is better plastic, it's just really uncomfortable to hold. I've tried launching it like this, I've tried launching it like this, and then, you know, my finger will get hit. I've tried it like this. this. I've even tried it like this. It's just really uncomfortable to hold this. And you can't really get that much good launches with it because it's just a ripcord launcher. And I mean, it gets by, but you're not going to be having the most exciting, intense battles with these launchers. Especially in the Cosmic Vector set stadium itself, which we'll get to in a minute. But before we get to this stadium itself, let's talk about the actual performance of the Beyblades. Like I said, they are very, very light, and if you're just going to be using these ripcords, they're not going to really, like I said, have the best performance, even on an actual good Takratomi stadium. Because they're so light, they're just going to be moving around okay-ish, but they're not really going to have any weight to be able to go like go up the slopes pretty decently. They're just going to try to stay mostly in the center. And the thing with them being so light too is that when they're hitting, there isn't really a lot of action. So they're just mostly just there in the stadium, like being hit like this. And like that's fine again if you're starting out, but it doesn't really show the full potential of the Beyblade. Now, using a string launcher or a better ripcord launcher, just a better launcher in general, they perform a lot better. They go a lot faster. It gives them enough momentum to actually be able to go up the slopes a little bit better. But again, because they're so light, once they start hitting each other, there isn't enough weight to really like make them like rebound too much. So they'll just be coming and then they're just like they're hitting each other rather than moving around as intensively as like a better weighted Beyblade would. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes, you know, you want your Beyblade to stay more in the center. And again, because they are so light, they just basically just glide for the most part. They don't really have anything like holding them down. But because they are so light, they just, you know, end up just basically hitting each other instead of like tossing each other around because they are all so light. So that's one of the problems. It doesn't, you know, they're not being used to their full potential even with a actual better launcher. So not only that, you know, they are pretty hollow for the most part, especially like compared to the Takratomi ones. So here's like, as you can see, right here on the tips. So again, that does not help. That when you're trying to battle with them pretty good, they just either glide if it's being an attack type, and then when it comes to attack, it just stays because it won't have enough momentum really to be going up too much, or get away from it too far. It just goes like back down. And I know that heavier Beyblades will also go down the slope a little bit more, but at least they have enough weight to them where they can like use that weight to go up the slope or the ramp a little bit better. And then also to be able to knock the Beyblade out more. And I'm pretty confident in this because I've battled these two many times, and then I also battled their Takratomi versions many times with the same types of launchers, same stadiums, same launches, same launch strength, and that's basically what I was realizing. Now, at the same time, with them being so light, you know, again, that can be good for some things, you know, trying to get the Beyblade to outspin the other one a little bit. Not always though. Again, the fact that they're just so light and hollow just does not really help too much. If it helps, it's only like this much and in a very specific type of combination. So these would not be good at all for competitive play, especially against Takratomi stuff. against Hasbro stuff, these are probably gonna be a little bit better because again, the quality in them is a little bit better than the previous Hasbro stuff. Ironically, Vanished Fafnir won most of the matches, which is really interesting because there's no rubber to it, but not bad. Because I thought it was gonna suck more, but it did pretty decent. So, and then there's another big complaint. These use slopes still for their teeth mechanism. Instead, as you can see right over here, instead of Takuratomi's teeth mechanism, which you can see right there, right here. And that's been the staple for Hasbro since the very beginning of Beyblade Burst. The problem with that is, you know, they make it very easy to burst, and for some reason, in particular, Magma Ifritter. Now, let's talk about my complaints with Magma Ifritter. It is supposed to be the big selling point for the Cosmic Vector set. For the Cosmic Vector battle set. Because this is a Beyblade that was supposed to be, that is in the Beyblade Burst anime, but it has not been released in Japan. And a lot of people assume it's because Hasbro asked Takuratomi to include this Beyblade there so that they could hype up their gimmick. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, let's just quickly talk about Magma Ifritter. It looks cool. I like its designs. These golden pieces here look like horns, and then this like blades or like spiky fur or whatever. It looks really cool. And honestly, Magma is not bad at kind of destabilizing or unbalancing a Beyblade. It did a pretty good job at that, in the tests I did. Again, unstabilizing or unbalancing, or destabilizing and unbalancing a Beyblade, specifically Vanished Fafnir. But that's about it. It's not too good for attack. It's basically a balance type, and that's fine. Thankfully, the box for the set does actually get that right. It's definitely a balance type. So, because sometimes Hasbro uses the wrong typing. But yeah, so it's definitely a balance type, and they did that pretty good. It doesn't move around as aggressively as I wanted to, and when switching the tips, it does a little bit better. But mostly again at destabilizing or unbalancing a Beyblade, not as much for attacking. The problem with Magma Ifritter though is that we all basically know that Takuratomi Beyblades have stronger teeth, weaker teeth, in between teeth. Like the teeth strength varies from a specific Beyblade to the other specific Beyblade, and that seems to be the case for Hasbro as well with its slope. But Magma Ifritter's slope is insanely bad. It literally, I was doing a battle in the Cosmic Vector set against Destruction Bellfire, and Destruction Bellfire gave it literally just 2 hits, and this Beyblade just exploded. Magma Ifritter, in, I would say, if I did, as an example, 10 battles, it lost by burst, literally like 7 times. That's how bad its slope is. Every single time it just bursts so easy. I will say this though, this disc is okay, but it's very similar to other discs we had, and it's also pretty hollow. A couple of the Valkyries have similar discs to this, so yeah. Now, and as for the armor or the gravity ring, I think it looks pretty cool. So it's just really surprising for me that they kind of did this Beyblade really bad in the sense of its slope as well. So that's upsetting. Now, when it also comes to how light these Beyblades are, and actually I think I just remembered something. Okay, so we've got that. So they even changed the logos for the drivers. That's interesting. But yeah, so because these Beyblades are even light, when battling against their Takuratomi versions, they actually kept bouncing up. Like I was battling these two together, and like this Beyblade would make Bellfire would make Dynamite Benio, or sorry, Belio will make Bellfire hop up a little bit because it was pretty light compared to how heavy this is and the amount of force behind the hit. So I didn't really like that. And before I forget, there's one thing in particular that I really wanted to touch on that really surprised me, and that's how bad the teeth in not the teeth, the slopes in general are for these Beyblades. So, okay. So here we've got Dynamite Benio, and here we've got Destruction Bellfire. I'm holding both of them by their drivers, and I'm just keeping it like this. I had noticed that when I was just messing around, like I was just bored and I was just holding them, while I was watching videos and stuff, I just try to imagine like what it would be like when it's spinning to the right, you know, and just trying to get a feel for it, just trying to see like how this would perform, you know, and without, again, I'm just resting it. I'm not pressing on it. I'm just resting it. I just started spinning it. Hold on. So yeah, I had just started spinning it, and then with the slightest friction on like the inside here, it just starts moving. The whole sliding slope mechanism. So any little caught, anytime it gets like caught, it just moves so easily, like butter basically. And that's even more so for this Beyblade. So yeah, I'm not, yeah, see what I mean? Like any little moment that it gets stuck, it will move very easily, and I think that's part of why these slopes aren't too good. Now when you compare it to a Takratomi one, again holding it directly here, and like, see what I mean? Like it's not, alright, hold on, it's a little bit harder to hold it here, but see, it's not even clicking. And again, I'm like really moving it. And if I try to hold it through the disc, even so, and now I'm like really holding it, and only if I'm like I'm locking it. But if I'm just, you see, so that's what I'm saying. These, you know, like you can easily make this move the teeth, but these, like, it's so easy to just make it slide. So that's something I also didn't like. So performance wise, they're kind of easy to burst, except I wasn't able to make these two burst each other too much. I think maybe like only once or twice, if I remember correctly. If not, then I wasn't able to at all. But bursting Destruction Bellfire was so easy. And I know I just said like how it's so easy to make these bursts, but I wasn't able to really make these two bursts. That's because I wasn't really trying to. Actually, there was one time this Fafnir did burst against Benio. So yeah, again, it really depends. They're just a lot easier to burst than the Takratomi versions, especially Magma Ether. That's what I'm trying to say. And I guess that Hasbro really tried to go all out with the burst element of it, and that's fine, but I wish they would have done it a little bit different. Now, in terms of how they perform on the actual Cosmic Vector Stadium, this stadium is not that good. I like that it's pretty wide, but there was no need to have these grooves. I mean, they don't do too much to get in the way, but these ones right here, they kind of do. There was a moment where I was with the Hasbro Vatner Fafnir, and its tip, this particular tip, kind of got stuck on the groove, and it was just spinning, and then it went. These grooves would be okay if it was like a little bit deeper to make it go this way, you know, but considering that this is already like a slope, and it goes down, there is no point for this. Especially here, these ridges here. So these either make your Beyblade get stuck and then go down, but again, there's no point in them going down because they already are in a slope. So it's mostly just going to be getting in the way. And then these ones in particular, they're just going to be getting in the way. Your Beyblade is literally just going to be losing balance and stamina by riding on these. So I did not like that. These over here, I thought that they were okay. They didn't really interfere too much. But again, that's also because the way that these Beyblades are and the way that this stadium is kind of hurts each other, in the sense where this slope isn't very big and the slope itself is very shallow, and it's not going to give you enough room to really go up. So I would say out of like 20 battles, for the most part, they just stayed in the center of the stadium. Because again, they'll go down, and then since there isn't really much force for them to go up, because they're so light, they're just gonna be coming back down and just staying there because it's almost kind of flat as well. Like the whole slope is up to here, and like this whole section, then it just makes them stay right in the center. And that brought some little complications. So that basically brought complications when you're trying to have an exciting battle and you can't, because right here it's pretty flat. It's not fully flat, but still pretty flat, and you know the slope basically ends around right here. So yeah. Overall though, it's good that it's like wide. When a proper battle is happening and the Beyblades do like come around here, it can be fun. But again, that rarely happens, at least in the testings I did. And if you're launching it with the ripcord launchers, at least these ones, you're not going to be getting that much action. It's literally just going to be here for the most part in this little dome. So again, not a lot happening here. It doesn't fully show the extent of what Beyblades are. Now, when launching it strong, let's say you have these and you're able to get a pretty decent, strong, comfortable launch, they behave okay, they behave decently on this stadium, just not too good. Now, if you're using a string launcher or a Takratomi launcher and you're really like doing a good launch, they do move around here pretty often, but for the most part, again, because the slope is always bringing them down, eventually they're just going to be stuck here rather than allowing them to move around like in an actual like circular stadium. So that's one of the faults of it, because even if you're using the Hasbro Beyblades with a Takratomi or a string launcher, or a good string launcher, and they're just moving around here and then they just stay in the middle, because they're so light, once they hit the Beyblade, they won't always have too much force to go around. That whole big momentum is really just going to be at the start of the battle in this stadium. With the Takratomi versions of the Beyblades, that's a little bit different. They do have enough momentum to go up and around, so it does make it a little bit better. I did test these Takratomi Beyblades in this stadium as well as my other stadiums. But again, with these ridges here in the middle, it kind of gets in the way. So it's a kind of stadium. It can have some fun with like the way it goes up and stuff like that, and how it's wide in this way. But again, so it's just going to be bringing them back over here, and you would think that it will come up and then just like do a massive hit or like go like this, and that's kind of what this is for, so that you can go like this, right? That does happen kind of good. It's just there isn't a lot of force, so you really gotta do a strong, really strong launcher, especially not launcher, really strong launch, especially with these, in order to make them behave the way that they kind of should. Overall, though, like I said, this stadium can be fun, but it's mostly just it's not the best stadium. It's also really thin, as you can see. But yeah, overall, to summarize my thoughts in this very long video, this was a step in the right direction for Hasbro. They're giving us better quality, thankfully. They're giving us more customization, thankfully. They're keeping things the same. Like, even like the disc is the same, thankfully. The armor or the gravity ring is the same. It's just plastic, though. So they're trying to do definitely better, and they are in so many ways. But at the same time, they're going back to removing gimmicks, somewhat basically forcing their own gimmick on you, even though it's a little bit more acceptable this time, because at least the tips are kind of similar to the Takrotomi ones, or resembles it enough. But yeah, they're also removing gimmicks, they're forcing their gimmick on you, and it's just really hollow and light. And then also missing details. So again, they're going in the right direction with this, but they're still wanting to be cheap about it. Thankfully, this is not as cheap as what they were releasing before. I'm so grateful for that. Again, if these are what you can afford, these are so much better than what Hasbro was releasing before. So I definitely really recommend them. Mostly for that. But if you can afford the Takrotomi versions, just go with the Takrotomi versions. Yeah, you're going to be missing out on the whole performance tip changing thing, but again, there's no real point for that, even though it's a cool thing. But again, there's no point because you could literally just switch and that's it, and you can't even actually remove this when the Beyblade is assembled. It has to be disassembled for you to remove it. So at that point, why not just carry drivers with you? So I mean, I get it. It makes carrying something like this so much easier than carrying like 5 of these things, full drivers. But still, it just makes more sense to just have, to do that. So I can still kind of understand where they're going from with this. It's just not fully needed, basically. Yeah, but if you can definitely afford the Takrotomi version, like even just picking them up, you definitely just see the whole weight difference with them. Like, it's just, and like the quality itself too. But again, these thankfully don't feel as bad as the other ones before. These do feel more closer to the Pro Series, but not that much, just close enough. Like, if this is how close Hasbro was releasing their burst Beyblades, and like, if this was like the quality of their burst Beyblades before, and then this was the quality of their Pro Series, and then like this like is the quality of the Takrotomi ones, right? QuadDrive, but again, Hasbro's Pro Series, Hasbro's mainline, Hasbro's QuadDrive, I'd say is like it's close, really close to how Pro Series is. So see, so it's definitely much better quality for sure. So thank you, Hasbro, for fixing that. And yeah, they're doing something different, something that I'm fine with. It's just seeing what they're doing now with this as an example, and what they're going to be doing soon with like Savage Valkyrie and stuff like that. It really makes me worried about what they're going to do with like Greatest Raphael, or Prominence Valkyrie, or all of those other Beyblades in general. So So yeah, that's going to be very, very interesting. But with all that said, I'm just glad that they fixed so many issues that I had. They still have some issues, but honestly, this is one that I'm saying, like, okay, at least you guys did better on this one, for sure. Not just on idea concept, but just quality in general. So yeah, guys, with all that said, I'm sorry this video was so long. I just wanted to give my honest initial thoughts on Hasbro's QuadDrive Beyblades. Again, they're not as bad as a lot of people are saying, but they're not amazing either. But still so much better. These at least are acceptable, for sure, compared to what Hasbro was doing before. For the most part, they're acceptable. It just really sucks that they really focus on making the first wave look good, so that it could get people excited for it again, and then everything else is just gonna end up looking really, really bad. As an example, you know, especially that Salvage Valkyrie one. That one is, I don't know what they were thinking in butchering it that much, but anyway, most of my biggest complaints had been addressed for the most part, so I'm just grateful for that. Yeah, I think, you know, like, if these are what you guys can afford, try to get these over the other Hasbro ones for sure. But then if you can afford the Pro Series, get the Pro Series. But then at that point, if you can afford the Pro Series, just get Takuratomi, because they're basically going to be the same price. So anyway, guys, with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Sorry this video was so long. I just really wanted to make this video long and really talk about these things in a very open, honest way, because I don't think a lot of people had done that. So yeah, overall, again, I'm impressed. Thank you, Hasbro, for fixing things, but you guys are still screwing up so much, and it seems like it was all a marketing thing. Kind of like, hey, look, we fixed things, they look good, and then it's like, all right, people are now hyped about this, let's just go back to what we were doing and not making them look good anymore. That's what it feels like. So it kind of feels like they kind of try to rip us off in a little bit. Or yeah, but at least for the most part, they fixed a lot of things, especially the quality feel of these, and the performance of them as well. So those are the biggest things for sure. So I'm really glad Hasbro fixed that. They still screwed up a bunch of stuff, like, why is the mode allowing us to do that, but then you cover it so that we can't put it? Again, it's Hasbro being Hasbro with Beyblade Burst, and it sucks, but it's so much better than what they were giving us before, so I can't fully complain about that. So thank you for that. Still sucks what they're kind of doing with some things, but anyway, I've said that like 1,000 times. Anyway, guys, I hope this video was informative. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good night.